先月27日、ビバリーヒルトンで行われたアーンスト&ヤングの授賞式。今年最も優れた実業家を選ぶこの授賞式で、漫画出版会社トキョポップの CEO スチュアート・リビーさんがノミネートされました。
My friend, the designer, told me about a great manga, and he really wanted to turn it into a television show. So he recommended that I read it, and I said, sure. And once I did read it, I found that it was amazing. It was just like watching a movie. And so I thought, wow, there's something really fascinating, some real interesting content. And when I went to look at some more manga, I realized they were all amazing. And so that's when I decided I must do something with this content to bring it to overseas to America.
日本滞在中に読んだ漫画がきっかけとなり、ビジネスを始めるようになったスチュアートさん。日本の漫画には欧米文化にない魅力があると言います。
You know, manga is, when you read it, it really is, as I experienced, like watching a film. So you can get lost in another world, and it can take you away from the day-to-day of reality. And so there's something fascinating about, you know, a different culture, like Japanese, like Japan, Asia, and to a Westerner, there's that combination of fascination with another culture, plus the escape of great entertainment.
アメリカにおける漫画ブームの最先端を行く東京ポップ。ここロサンゼルスにある支社では、ありとあらゆる漫画の出版を手掛けています。リーアンさんはここで英語化された漫画の編集を担当しています。
Most of our translations are actually done freelance. It's a fairly long process where we get sample copies of the Japanese books from Japan. We send them out to the freelance translators who just pretty much write a Word document script. They send it back to us. We often have someone rewrite it to kind of smooth out the translation, make the English a little bit more fun and exciting. And then the editor actually goes over that script as well and does a copy edit, make sure that everything is going to be in the right place. And we actually take the books from Japan, stick them in the microwave to melt the glue in the spine, and then pull the pages apart and put them in these big industrial scanners. And so we scan the hard copies of these Japanese books, so we have these digital files, and then we retouch out the Japanese and the balloons and put the English script in. It's really a fun medium. We get a lot of questions about sort of what's the difference between Japanese-style comics and American-style comics, and it's a stylistic thing to some extent. A lot of people are like, oh, pointy chins, big eyes, bubblegum-colored hair, that's kind of what makes it manga. It's a lot more complicated than that. It's a lot more sophisticated. The manga storytelling medium is incredibly cinematic. It's all about camera angles, making the reader really get sucked into the story and experience what the characters are feeling. And it's incredibly powerful in that way. And there's a lot of sophistication in the storytelling styles. American media, especially what's aimed at teenagers for the most part, is often very cynical. It kind of talks down to the viewer and to the reader a lot of the time. And there's something very forthright about the Japanese storytelling style. It's very earnest, it's very heartfelt. Whether it's aimed at young teens or whether it's aimed at older women like me, that's something that's tremendously appealing to a lot of American readers, that kind of earnestness, that sense of it being about emotions and being about characters, as well as these exciting, fantastical stories.
東京ポップは1996年に設立され、北米市場における日本翻訳漫画の大手、パイオニアとして知られています。美少女戦士セーラームーン、ラブヒナなどのヒットをもとに、現在では書店の販売シェアで 50% 以上を占め、成長著しい企業として注目を集めています。
Yeah, I think that that's a natural evolution. You know, you had it with rock and roll. Parents hated rock and roll. They thought it was bad for you. And so manga, you know, is the same sort of a thing. When it first came out, it was supposed to be bad for the young generation, that it would corrupt their mind and warp them. But over time, I think people now see that it encourages creativity. It's a lot about problem solving. It's a lot about heroes and being able to relate to characters who there's a lot of lessons to be learned, real world lessons. And so just like film, there's some very positive messages, a lot of positive messages that can be learned. And just because some things might be a little bit more cutting edge, or a little bit more questionable when it comes to maybe some violence or sexual themes, that's what day-to-day life is anyway. So addressing those themes straightforwardly as opposed to skirting around the issue and avoiding them is a much healthier way to teach a young person who is, nowadays young people are, you cannot hide them from the real world. So it's best to at least talk to them in a language they can understand.
漫画の世界的成長を反映して東京ポップはブームを迎えています。近年は北米市場での成功をもとにヨーロッパの漫画市場への進出を狙っています。
The hardest part is every single day it continues. It still has not ended. Every single thing is a challenge. Starting off was a challenge because nobody accepted manga. The stores didn't want it. People didn't want to take a risk. And convincing them that it's worth the risk was a big, big challenge. Convincing the Japanese partners, the licensors, publishing companies, they should work with us to try to bring manga to the West is always a challenge. Now we've made it popular, so every single company wants to get in this business. So competing with them and proving that we are the best. Tokyopop is really, #1 and will continue to be #1. That's a big challenge. The challenges never end. 皆さん、日本の文化を誇りに思ってください。世界中の人たちはそれ影響を受けて、自分もこれから表現していくことも日本の影響は必ず入ってきますから、それもみんな自慢として思ってください。東京ポップも応援してください。よろしくお願いします。